Good morning. Today is Wednesday, the 8th day of Teves. So we continue today in chapter 8, where the Alter Rebbe is discussing. We spoke yesterday about the effect of macholes asiros, the forbidden foods, what it does, and the concept that what Isur, which means prohibition, and it means tying down. That means that through anything that is connected with the impurity, it ties down anything which is not kosher. It's tied down to the evil side. Now, when it's tied down to the evil side, one cannot elevate it. That's why it's called tied. Mutar means untied. And the same thing, everything which is kosher, and we do use it in a proper way, then we elevate it. And again, to remind, we spoke about the two levels of the impurity, the level which is called the klipas noiga. Klipas noiga is the shell which has light, which is a shell that that's evil, that potentially can be elevated, and that is everything which is kosher, everything which is permissible. And then you have the things which is absolutely not kosher, and that is the unkosher food, and anything which comes from the not good side is tied to the sholish klipas atmeis, the total impurities. And we mentioned also yesterday about even when you eat the kosher things, but if it's done, if it's used not for the godly purpose, but it's used for selfish purposes, then it also ties it down. However, this is only temporary, and you can elevate it. But even though it's only temporary, some parts of it become attached to the body. Being that with everything that you eat, it becomes a physical blood and flesh, and it becomes, so you have something that becomes connected to the body. And for that reason, we explained there is a process that the body needs to go through, and this is the process of chibut hakever, which means it is the process of shaking up, so to speak. And the body has to be shaken up, and we explained yesterday that the whole idea of purgatory that comes after this life in this world, it is a process of cleansing. It's not a punishment. It's not that God wants to take revenge or something. It is something which is done for the neshama in order to cleanse it. Just like when you take a child, that they warn him that a child don't do some dangerous things, because otherwise they're gonna have to take you to the doctor and put you some stitches. And if the child doesn't listen and he goes and he gets hurt, then you have to take him to the doctor and you have to clean it. So it's not a punishment. It's not a revenge. It is something that needs to be done in order to cleanse it. Now, when it comes to cleansing things, we're going to learn today also, is when it comes to cleansing, there is different types of cleansing. Take, for example, on a garment. Let's say you have a lot of dust, dirty dust on the garment. What do you have to do? You have to shake it up. You have to shake it up. Some things, if you take the dust and you wash it with water, it's going to help. No, it's not going to help. It's going to make it worse. It's going to make it mud. You have to shake it up. There is some things that needs cleaning with water. Something that needs hot water. All kinds of different things that is a different way of cleansing it. So the same thing he calls it. Yesterday we learned the chibut hakeva, that there is angels, so to speak, that cleanse the body. That the body, being that a body enjoyed throughout the life things which is permissible, but it was done only for selfish reasons. So that selfishness has to be cleansed. That we spoke about yesterday, about the food eating, enjoying physical. Today he's talking about also, there is words that we say, not just food that we eat, but it's also the words that we say. When we speak words, every word that we say has build a word that where the words that you use is something, a positive thing that you do. And when you use words of Torah, that's the way the words are meant to be used. If it's not Torah, it's called dvarim betelim, idle work, idle talk. So dvarim betelim, there is every Jew has to study Torah constantly, and every available moment has to be to study Torah. Now, however, some people are not capable of studying Torah. Then, for them, there is they don't have the violations of not studying Torah because they're not capable of. They don't have the capacity of studying Torah. Nevertheless, the idle talk that they talk create energy and has to be cleansed, has to be purified, has to be elevated. So this is also, he is going to describe what is called the kafakela. Kafakela means it's called the hollow of a sling, like that says that the neshama, it goes from one extreme to another extreme, meaning it is showing the beauty of holiness, and then it is showing the physical enjoyment, which is a pain for the soul. That it goes back from one extreme to the other extreme. That's like you sling the ball from one end to the other. That is a process, another process of cleansing the neshama, cleansing the soul from what is called the dvarim betelim, the idle talk. So let's look inside. Ve'al dvarim betelim beheter. Now, for innocent idle chatter, talk. When a person talks, idle talk, but it's not in a forbidden way, but it's in an innocent way, meaning when the person is not obligated to study Torah because he's not able, ignoramus, we cannot study. By the way, back in the days, there was a lot of people who couldn't study because there was no access of understanding unless you're a big scholar and you go to yeshiva and you know everything. But today's day, very few people are not capable of studying because we have so much access and so many explanations and so many lessons. We have online, offline, that we have ability to study Torah. And a person is total, but even today, if people are not capable at all understanding, they're not obligated, so they're innocently talking idle chatter. Talk. So that talk also needs to be cleansed, even if it's not evil talk. Evil talk we'll speak in a moment. So that says, Tzarich letaya nafshe mituma zu de klipa ze. The soul must be cleansed He must have his soul cleansed from this impurity, from this klipa, from this shell. And how is it done? Al yedei gilgula bekafar kela. Through the soul being rolled in the hollow of a sling, as we explained before. It's being shown all the both extremes, the good and the bad, and it's like something that's shaking up the neshama. As it says in the Zohar, Parsha Beshalach Daf Nun Tes, it says in the Zohar. Avol, however, lediburim asurim. We're talking about not just idle talk, not just idle chatter, but if we talk about forbidden speech, what is forbidden speech? Kegoin leitzanus, scoffing, you're scoffing off all good things. Veloshen hara, you slander, speak evil about, that is already not idle chatter, that's already forbidden talk. V'kayetz and similar talks. Shehein misholosh klipes atmeyes legamre. This talk comes from the three completely unclean klipes, as we explained, the total impurities. Ein kafa kela levadei moil. There, the hollow of the idol of the sling alone does not help. Letair ulehavir tumosem yanefesh, to clean and to remove the impurity from the soul. And for that, it needs another way of cleansing, and that is rak tzricha lered legehinnom. This must descend into Gehinnom, the purgatory. This is a greater process of cleansing the soul. And also, Misha Efshel Elasei B'Torah. Now, we spoke about a person who talks idle talk, a person that is not capable of studying Torah. Even him has to cleanse his neshama from the idle talk. But when a person is capable of studying Torah, but instead, is instead occupied. He occupies himself with idle chatter. Then the hollow of the sling alone is not enough. It's not sufficient to help his soul to cleanse it and to purify it. This neshama must receive more severe punishment, penalties, which is, again, the cleansing that goes for neglecting the study of the Torah specifically. Milvad, and that is in addition, Oynesh HaKlali, there is a general retribution, L'chol bittul mitzvahs aseh. There is a general punishment for anyone who violates doing a positive mitzvah, machmas atzlus, because it's of laziness. And what is that? What is the punishment for that? Begehenim shel sheleg is a purgatory of snow. What is a purgatory of snow? Just like we said, is Gehenim. Usually we know Gehenim is a very hot place, Gehenim of fire. But this is everything goes according to the cleansing process is according to what the damage was done to the soul. So if the damage was done when someone violates a mitzvah, if someone violates a mitzvah, the damage is like he's doing something out of passion. He's passionately doing something which is wrong. Then the cleansing is also a fire, a passionate cleansing. But if someone is not doing a mitzvah because of laziness is of coldness. So the cleansing is also a cold cleansing. Like take someone, a lazy person, and throw some cold water on him. All of a sudden, he's going to wake up. He's going to shake up. So the obviously this is just an example, but the idea here is that there is the process of what it says in the Kabbalah, that the cleansing of the soul for not doing because of laziness, you have what it's called the Gehenna Shel Sheleg, the purgatory of snow, as explained elsewhere. And now, here comes also what we spoke in the beginning. Now, what about secular studies? So again, secular studies, is that something which is permissible? Are we allowed to study secular studies or not? The answer is yes, but in two conditions. And the two conditions, actually, the two conditions, but it also has to be the basic background, and then I'll explain. The two conditions that you need is, number one, if you do it to make a living. If you need to make a living, you study law, you become a lawyer. If you do it for holy purposes, that's the second condition. If let's say you study science to be able to figure out when the new month is, to figure out the astronomy, and so on, those are things which is permissible. But if it's not for these two reasons, it's not to make a living, and not to using it out for good purposes, then the secular studies is a problem, because you're using your mind. It's not just idle chatter. Idle chatter, you're just using, you just talk. But if it's secular studies, you're actually investing your mind in something which is not godly. So you're not using your external faculties. You're going deep into your mind and using it to something which is not godly, bringing it to a low place. Now, this is the two conditions. However, it has to be also the proper background, as the Rebbe many times stressed, that to go to college, to go to study secular studies, you need to have someone who has already a strong Jewish background. That the danger of the colleges, as we see today, how dangerous it is, besides the danger of intermarriage, or getting involved with not Jewish partners, so that the Rebbe said the background, the Jewish background, has to be strong, and also preferably to be married people to go. When you're strong, established, and you're married, then when you're doing it for the right reasons, that meets the two conditions, one of the two conditions, then it's okay. But otherwise, the secular studies has a deeper effect on the neshama if it doesn't meet these two conditions. Let's continue. That's what it says here. Similarly, when occupying with the intellectual wisdoms of the nations of the world, this is also considered, regarding the sin of violating Torah, is considered the idle chatter. Meaning, if you're able to study Torah and instead you go study secular studies, then you're violating you become, it's dvarim betelim, idle chatter. As it says in the laws of learn the Torah study. And then, but more than that, it says, moreover, it says the impurity of the intellectual studying of the nations of the world, the impurity is greater than the impurity of just idle speech. Why? Because idle speech only affects the emotions. Idle speech only clothes and defiles only the emotions. The emotions, they emanate from the holy element of ruach, the air. Ruach HaKadosh shebenafshe lekisum, is godly soul. And it defiles it, betumas klipas noiga shebedvorim betelim, with the impurity of what is called the klipas noiga, that klipa, that shell, which is potentially can be good, but while it's not holy, it's considered klipa, shebedvorim betelim, which is in the idle chatter. And this idle chatter comes from the bad, the evil element of air in this klipa, which comes from the animal soul, as mentioned above. However, when you have just idle chatter, talk, which is not Torah talk, it affects only the emotional part, but it doesn't affect the intellect. It doesn't affect the Chabad, the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge of a soul, because they are just words of foolishness and ignorance. You just talk. That even fools and ignoramuses, they can also talk like that. However, when a person studies the secular studies, in the case of the science of the nations, it is affecting, clothing, and defiling the levels of Chochma Bina Das, the wisdom, understanding of knowledge, the intellectual faculties of the godly soul, with the impurity of the klipa of noiga, which is contained in those sciences. And the science had fallen through the shattering of the vessels, which is a term we spoke about in the past, the shattering of the vessels, which comes from the hinder part of Chochma Bina Das of Kedusha, as it is known to those who study Kabbalah. And except when it's okay to study the sciences, that's what we said before, the two conditions, Elohim Kain, unless one employs them, the sciences, as useful instruments, as to become means of earning a living, to make a living, to be able to serve Hashem, to make a affluent livelihood, to be able to serve Hashem properly. That's condition number one. Or condition number two, or unless he knows how to apply them, these sciences, in serving God, or to his better understanding his Torah. This is the reason why the Maimonides, the Rambam, he was a doctor, he was a scientist, but he used all of this to serve Hashem and to understand the Torah better. The Ramban and also the Nachmanides of blessed memory, this is also the reason why the previous Rebbe sent our Rebbe to go to Berlin and Sorbonne universities, and he learned the science, and he was able to have credibility in the scientific world and to use it out to bring people back to Yiddishkeit, and so many people to affect the world in a positive way. So this is the end of today's shir. Thank you for joining, and please make sure to share this shir, and every morning, 9 o'clock here on Zoom. All the best. Any questions?